Hey everyone, it's Mackenzie with HashBasis, and in this video, we're going to review the Release Gold contract on Celo and learn how to read it from an accounting perspective, but also from just a pure data block explorer perspective, because these contracts can be a little bit complicated, and if you know where to look, then you can grab the information that you need. So to find an example release gold contract that was actually deployed correctly, I just went on GitHub here to Celo's GitHub and looked at governance, because periodically Celo's community fund funds different initiatives to improve the Celo ecosystem and community, things like that. So I found this proposal here, which is related to funding payment contracts for Oracle providers. And the overview gives some examples here of the two recipients of the money here, or the community funds, and it also lays out how they're getting paid. And in order to get paid, it looks like Release Gold contracts here were deployed in order to facilitate the payment. So we've got T systems, we've got Redstone, two beneficiaries here, and it gives us the information as to where this payment was actually sent on the Celo blockchain. So we're just gonna take a look at T systems here. So first off, their beneficiary address. So the address where they're going to actually be receiving the Celo is the one ending in 52E2. We have one-time payment contract, and then we have a monthly payment. Now, the contract that I'm interested in is this monthly payment, because this is a monthly recurring payment that is going to be released or deployed through the Release Gold contract. And so just for context, let me actually pull up the documentation here. I recommend reading this if you want to learn more, but Release Gold is just a smart contract that lets Celo be released over time instead of just sending a lump sum of Celo to someone at one time, where it's freely transferable and they can do whatever they want with it. It allows you to put time-based vesting restrictions on the Celo. So it's good for things like this, like for longer-term contracts where someone's doing work for you and you want them to receive all their payment, but you want them to get it over time, probably based on different milestones, or for things like employment-based compensation. So it's definitely very common in startups, both within the fiat world and also in crypto, where employees and founders can get stock awards or stock grants. And these typically vest over time. And there's different tax implications. In the article we're going to release, we talk about the 83B election. That's a big thing here in the US. And the Release Gold contract is just one way to programmatically do this on the Celo blockchain. So super cool. Recommend reading through this. It's really great because you can get very granular with this. So for example, you can say the frequency in which you want the Celo to be released, the amount that's going to be released each period, and then how many periods that the Celo is going to be released over. And then of course, if you want to set a cliff, you can also do that. So in typical startup land, usually you have 4-year grants. There's a 1-year cliff. At the 1-year cliff, usually 25% of the grant is released. And then every, let's say, month afterwards, a subsequent amount is then vested. And in crypto terms, that means it's also available to be withdrawn. So let's go back to this example though, and we're going to grab this monthly payment contract here, and we're going to pop it into CeloScan. Now, CeloScan is just the block explorer that we use for Celo, and as you can see here, it looks like we have a Celo balance of 10,556 Celo. We got some Celo transactions that are happening here. The method that's being called is withdraw for all of them. We got internal transactions. We'll get into that in a second. We got token transfers, and then importantly, we've got the contract tab here. Now, unlike Etherscan, on CeloScan, it's really hard to actually read the contracts. There's no way to, at least I haven't seen a way to decompile the bytecode or really just read it almost like a sentence. On Etherscan, you're able to read the logs and you can kind of put together what's happening in the contract. But on CeloScan, you're not really able to do that. Even when I kind of decompile the code, it just returns language that I can't really understand or put in accounting terms. But the good thing is that we know this is a contract, right? So this is the correct Release Gold contract. Now, when a Release Gold contract is deployed, there are a couple of things that you're going to see. So if we scroll down, we're going to see this method set and initialize implementation. We're going to see that being called. We're also going to see transfer ownership, and this is where the beneficiary address is set. If there's a refund address, that's set as well. And so you want to see these things. And also, I'm not sure what this function actually means, but I just see it being called quite often, basically whenever a Release Gold contract is being deployed. Now, what I think is actually easier to look at is if you go to events here. This lets you see what's happening in a little bit more clear details. So, for example, there's ownership transfer here, but what's really important is where it says release gold instance. So, if you open that up, it tells you the beneficiary address. And so, this is the address that's able to withdraw or claim the Celo that's being vested over time. So this address is eventually going to receive the Celo that was placed in this contract to subject it to those time-based restrictions that we talked about. So good to know that's where the Celo is going to be going once it is vested. Now, if we go to token transfers, ERC20 here, we can see that on January 26, 2024, the Celo Community Fund sent roughly 31,000 Celo to this Release Gold contract. And just to review the flow, so Celo is sent into the smart contract, and then over time, the Celo vests, and whoever is the beneficiary can periodically withdraw the tokens to their own self-custodied address. Now, this 31,000, if we go back to GitHub here, that actually lines up with the monthly vesting payment contract. The total amount is 24,000 USD, which I'm guessing at the time of deployment equaled around 31,000 Celo. So that's where that amount comes from. We know the contract was fully funded. And if we go to the internal transactions, this represents all the withdrawals. So if we remember back on the transactions tab, this withdrawal method's being called quite a bit. Internal transactions is where we see the Celo that is actually being withdrawn here. So small amounts at first, and then it gets to be pretty consistent, 2639, it looks like every month around the same time. Now, that's what I can infer about this contract just based on what I see here on GitHub, the information I'm able to glean. But what I want to share with you is a really cool app that was actually built on Vercel by the Celo team, and this lets you see much more information about these Release Gold contracts. So if we go to the main tab here, we grab the Release Gold contract address, pop it into here. It's just going to give us the information in a way more human readable format. We have the total balance, which is the amount of Celo, which here it looks like CGLD or Celo Gold, which is the old ticker for Celo. We see the total balance is at 31,000. That is the amount that the contract was initially funded with, which again ties out to the proposal we see here. We have total withdrawn. So this is the total amount of Celo that was actually withdrawn from the contract, and presumably it landed in the beneficiary address. And we can actually double check this. So if we go to the internal transactions and we download page data, we can get all this information in a CSV. This is what it looks like. And if we add up the total amount of Celo that was withdrawn, we get that 21,000, which we see right here. Now, the released amount is the amount of Celo that is done with vesting, and it is available to be withdrawn. So 23,000 has vested, and out of that, 21,000 was actually withdrawn. And then remaining unlocked, this represents the amount of Celo that is still within the contract. And we can tell that by going to the contract here. And again, we see that Celo balance 10,556, which ties out to right here. Now, if the setting was enabled to be able to stake this Celo, because you can actually do that, even if the Celo is locked up, it's subject to vesting, you can still delegate it and earn staking rewards on this balance, which I think is a really cool feature of the Release Gold contract. But it looks like they haven't done that yet. So if they did, we would have seen what validator they delegated to, and also any staking rewards that have been earned. But the other important thing is that we can see the release schedule. So I can see that this contract was deployed or was started on December 16th, 2023. There's no cliff. The cliff is the same date as the release starts. Now, if this was an employee compensation grant, maybe the release cliff would have been a year after the release start. That's typically what I've seen. Release period is a month. So every month, 2639 Celo Gold is going to be released, and that's going to happen over 12 months here, or basically 1 year, which is why I think we start to see this pattern of 2639 to be withdrawn. If you go back to internal transactions, we start to see that happening. Before it was probably just a little bit more irregular, but we start to see probably what's happening is that this amount's being released over a period, and then immediately after it's being withdrawn. So hopefully this sheds a little bit more light into how to read these release gold contracts. And again, I also recommend checking out the documentation and our article if you want to learn more about the tax implications of this as well. But overall, really cool tool and smart contract that is enabled on the Celo blockchain. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at Hashbasis, and have a great day. Thank you.